Well, author of Loot, Britain and the Benin Bronzes, Barnaby Phillips joins us now from London. Barnaby, so great to have you on the program with us. You know, this is certainly a positive development for Germany to make moves to return the artifacts in its possession. Does that indicate that there is a growing momentum now for many of these artifacts to be returned to their places of origin? And what do you think is behind this momentum?
I think the momentum, Rachel, is quite specific to sub-Saharan Africa, so I wouldn't necessarily apply it across the board with some of the earlier examples that you were citing there. As regards sub-Saharan Africa, it's been building quietly for years. You may recall in 2017, President Macron of France went to Burkina Faso and he made an explosive speech saying that it wasn't acceptable that Africa's cultural heritage was in European museums. He commissioned a report which came out the next year, the Savoy report, which was much more radical than people expected. It put French museums under pressure, but it resonated across Europe. Then jump forward a couple of years, and of course we had Black Lives Matter last summer in European time, and that really turbocharged the debate. The Benin bronzes have become emblematic of the issue, I think, for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the manner in which they were taken was particularly egregious and outrageous by the British military in 1897 and very well documented. And secondly, there are so many of them, and some of them are absolutely splendid masterpieces amongst the very most precious and beautiful things which have come out of sub-Saharan Africa. So I think that's why they've captured people's imagination.
What about London's British Museum, which has so far said that it will not return its some 900 Benin artifacts, many of which aren't even on display? What's its reasoning behind that, and what do you think it would take for it to actually change its mind and return these artifacts?
Well, the British Museum is in a peculiar and a complicated situation. It's important to say that. Yes, it does have the biggest collection of Benin bronzes in the world, and as so often, it finds itself at the center of these kinds of debates. It is constrained by something called the British Museum Act of 1963, which makes it impossible for the museum curators to hand over items permanently, to give them up, with one or two specific exceptions to do with the Nazi Holocaust or to do with human body parts. But otherwise, the curators are somewhat constrained. It would take an act of parliament pushed through by the British government for the British Museum to de-accession, as they say, parts of its collection. And given the politics of this government, in fact, how it's, in fact, to some degrees, tried to fight a political fight over these kinds of issues on identity and culture, its agenda is quite the opposite. And it's inconceivable that this Conservative government would, I think, push through such legislation. So the British Museum is in an awkward situation, and it's come up with a compromise solution, which is it wants to lend back hundreds of Benin bronzes, and it's not giving any limitations as to which ones, to a proposed new museum in Benin City in southern Nigeria.
Oh, okay. Thanks for explaining that clearly. As far as returning these artifacts, what does it mean to Nigeria to have them back in their place of origin? And I know there's concern that they might not be properly cared for, but what does Nigeria have planned for these artifacts once they are back in the country?
Well, to the Edo people, who are the ethnic people of the old Benin Empire, this is a moment of extraordinary significance. And I would go further. I would say that if hundreds of Benin bronzes do return to a proposed new museum in Benin City, that for me would be perhaps really one of the most significant moments in African independence, at least as far as post-independence history, at least as far as culture is concerned. But we shouldn't be romantic about Nigeria. Its museum system has had terrible problems in recent decades, many thefts in the 1980s and 1990s in particular. And one of the awkward truths of this whole debate is that Nigerian museums already do have a good collection of Benin bronzes, nowhere near as big as the British museums, but they do have a very good collection. They've struggled to display them. They've struggled to prevent their theft. Well, this time, the ball is in the Nigerians' court. They say that they're going to build a new museum. They've put together something of a dream team, a wonderful architect, a man called Sir David Ajayi, celebrated. He built the Smithsonian African American Museum in Washington. They've got a very committed governor in Edo State, Godwin Obaseki. So the cards have all fallen in the right place. The mood is there. And really, European museums on the whole want to cooperate. The Nigerians are pushing against an open door. This is a golden opportunity for them to seize. And that in itself is indicative, I think, of just how quickly this debate, indeed perhaps the world, has changed in the last 2 or 3 years.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Barnaby Phillips in London, thank you so much.